Okay, so we start where we left off in the last lecture. Just to quickly revise what we had found last lecture, we said that in this circuit with an inductor and a resistor, if the voltage Vs is switched rapidly between two voltages, let us say 0 and V in, then the output voltage of this circuit is practically a DC if the switching time is much smaller than the time constant of the RL circuit. And this is generally true, more generally true for a low pass filter. This is of course a first order low pass filter, but if this is a second order low pass filter, also the same principle will work. The ripple in the output voltage is determined by the switching frequency and the time constant. So if the switching frequency is much higher than 1 divided by the time constant, then the ripple will be very small. Alright, the last lecture's numbers were RL was 10 ohms, inductor was 100 microhenries, so the time constant was 10 microseconds. The switching period we had finally arrived at for a very small ripple was 0.02 microseconds, which corresponded to an 8 megahertz switching frequency. For these numbers, the ripple voltage was 24 millivolts. All right. Now, as I just said, the switching frequency directly determines the ripple. So if the switching frequency is higher, it reduces the ripple. Also, a higher switching frequency allows us to reduce the value of L and therefore the size of L, because let us see why. So the time constant is L by R. So if the switching frequency is higher, then the time constant can be lower, which means that L can be lower. Lower time constant means higher minus 3 dB frequency. So if the switching frequency is higher, we can afford to have a higher minus 3 dB frequency and therefore a lower L, which is good because it reduces the size of L and therefore the overall size of the buck converter. Higher switching frequency also increases power consumption. So that is a disadvantage of a higher switching frequency. Typically in the world, switched mode power supplies use switching frequencies between 100 kilohertz and 2 megahertz. We are going to design a buck converter, and for that we will use a switching frequency of 100 kilohertz. Which is on the lower side, and so the last lecture it was 8 megahertz, which was very high. So if the switching frequency is lower, the ripple is going to be higher, all right, for a 100 kilohertz switching frequency. Suppose we want to reduce the ripple voltage for this given switching frequency, how can we reduce it? Okay, so that is the next question we ask. How can we reduce the ripple if the switching frequency is lower? One thing we can do, of course, is we can increase L so that the L by R is higher, the time constant is higher, and the minus 3 dB frequency is lower. But it turns out that that is not very practical or the most effective way of doing it. The more effective way of doing it is to design a second order filter. Our LR filter is a first order filter. So if we design a second order filter, then the gain will fall off at minus 40 dB per decade, and the ripple will be significantly smaller. So how do we make a second order filter out of that LR filter? This is what we do. We had seen this last semester. So we add a capacitor in parallel with the resistor. So now the L and C make this a second order low pass filter. All right. Let us see the effect of this in SPICE. So let us do a SPICE simulation. So I have that same circuit we saw last time. and I have added, so this is what we had last time: a voltage source, a resistor 10 ohms and an inductor 100 microhenries. Now across the same V1 we connect another RLC circuit, R2 between, which is 10 ohms, L2 which is 100 micro, and we connect a capacitor in parallel with the resistor which is 40 nanofarads, and this L2 is connected between 1 and O1. 1 is the same as V1. Alright, so now let us simulate this, and I'm doing a Bode plot, and let us plot both the output voltages of the RL circuit and the RLC circuit, the first order and the second order low pass filter. So let us convert this to a linear, and now let us see at 8 megahertz, which is the, for now I'm keeping 8 megahertz. What is the almost there? Okay, 8 megahertz. So we had seen this last time. The magnitude of the voltage, if the input frequency is 8 megahertz on this Bode plot, is almost 10 millivolts. We had seen this last time. This is for VO, which is the RL circuit. Now what is this voltage for the second order filter, the RLC circuit? Same frequency, the voltage is 500 microvolts, much smaller, from 10 milli to 500 micro. So let us put this back to decibel to kind of compare the two. So we can see here this blue, the RL circuit, is the voltage is dropping at minus 20 dB per decade. The RLC circuit, the voltage is dropping at minus 40 dB per decade, so that at 8 megahertz, the magnitude of the voltage is much smaller in the second order filter. Alright, so in fact let us see, let us do the ripple also, ripple calculate. Let us just look at the ripple, just to, in the transient analysis, it's nice to see. Alright, so I'm doing this for okay. Yeah, so the blue is the RL circuit, the red is the RLC circuit. The first blue is the first order, red is the second order. You can see that the ripple for the well, I can expand this, magnify this. The ripple for the RL circuit, which we had seen last lecture, is about 24 millivolts, and for the RL, the second order filter, you can see it is very small, right? If let us expand this and see if you can, very small, right? So this is how much? 5 microvolts is here, so about 6 microvolts and another 6 or 12 microvolts. All right, so very small ripple. Of course, this is at 0.02 at 8 megahertz. Our frequency will be 100 megahertz. So we're going to change all these numbers, but the point of this simulation is to show that the second order low pass filter allows us to well, causes a much smaller ripple in the output voltage. All right, so in fact this is the basic circuit of a buck converter for practically all buck converters that are made in the world, and there literally are hundreds and millions of buck converters today in various types of electronic circuits being used, and the basic circuit is this second order low pass filter LC, and RL of course is not put physically. RL is simply represents the Thevenin's resistance of whatever subsystem is connected to the output of this buck converter. All right. Okay, now let us start. Actually, this is basic is a wrong word. Let us develop this buck converter further. This is the basic circuit. We're going to expand this. So the first thing we remember is that Vs is actually generated by a DC voltage and two switches. So we saw this in the last lecture, because this is buck converter is a DC to DC converter, and input is a DC and output is a DC. So here Vs is of course a square wave, we want it a DC, so we put the switches back. So this is the basic buck converter. It has an input voltage which is a DC, it has an output voltage which is practically a DC. In between there are two switches, inductor, capacitor and some load resistance. Alright. Note, very important, note when you design this circuit actually, that S1 and S2 should never be on or off simultaneously. Alright, you cannot afford to have S1, S2 on simultaneously. You can see here, right, it just causes a short circuit. But you cannot afford to have them both off simultaneously also. Why? You think about it. Alright, maybe the next slide will answer that question, but in any case, given the next slide, you should be able to answer this question. Now, in a large number of buck converter circuits, S2 is implemented by a diode. It is not a switch, it is simply a diode. Of course, a diode is a switch in some sense, but let us think about this. How can this work? So when S1 is when S1 is closed, the voltage across the inductor from the left to the right is positive, right? Because Vin is greater than Vo. This is a buck converter. So the input is a DC. The output in steady state is also almost a DC. So a current flows, a positive IL flows in the inductor, alright, when S1 is closed. Now when S1 is opened, what happens? This inductor current has to flow somewhere. It has to have a loop. If S1 is opened, the inductor will want or force its current to be in the same direction, and through C and R it has to come back, and so through S2 the current must flow up. So the current in S2 has to flow up when S1 is closed. Alright. So now if we put a diode here, then when S1 is closed, this is a diode, so it is reverse biased when S1 is closed, because Vin is a positive voltage, and so this diode remains open circuited, which serves as an S2 which is open. When S1 is opened, the inductor causes an induced voltage which forces the diode to turn on and cause a current to flow up in the diode. Therefore, a diode works as a very good switch S2 for this particular circuit. And in fact, the reason that a diode is better than a switch, well, one reason a diode is better than a switch is that we don't have to synchronize the closing and opening of S1, S2. The diode automatically remains open circuited when S1 is closed, and the diode automatically turns on because of the inductor induced voltage when S1 is opened. Usually a Schottky diode is used. Not sure if you studied Schottky diode in the first half of the semester. A Schottky diode is a diode whose forward voltage when it is on is very small. It is of the order of 0.1 or 0.2 volts, as opposed to a silicon PN junction diode which has a voltage of about 0.6 to 0.7 volts. And you want this switch to be as ideal as possible, so we don't want any voltage across it when it is closed. So a Schottky diode works better than a regular PN junction diode. Alright, so this is the buck converter. Okay, this is the next step in our design of the buck converter circuit. So we have LCR, a diode and a switch and a Vin. Now let's think further. Now we talked a bit about regulation in the last class. Let us talk about it a little more. So this basic buck converter, this circuit for a given switching frequency converts one DC voltage to another DC voltage at the output. Now as we saw last time, if RL changes, then what will happen in this circuit? Well, specifically, what will happen to VO as RL changes? You think about this. Okay, this is a circuit we discussed only briefly in the last lecture and this one, but we've discussed this circuit in great detail last semester. So you think about what happens to the nearly DC voltage VO if RL changes. All right, and you find, okay, I'm going to tell you the answer. You convince yourself that it is a correct answer. If RL changes, VO is going to become smaller. All right. If RL becomes smaller, VO will become smaller. Okay, and you convince yourself that that is true. Now, what a buck converter needs to be designed so that when RL changes, VO does not change. And we had discussed this last lecture that the load or the integrated circuit, various modules in the integrated circuit may turn on and off, which will cause the effective Thevenin's resistance to change. But as it changes, the output DC voltage of the buck converter must remain constant. And the process of achieving a constant output voltage is called as load regulation. That is maintaining the output voltage constant. As RL varies, is called load regulation. Similarly, Vin can vary due to various reasons. One of them being power fluctuations, which will cause, so this Vin, well, two reasons Vin can change. If the Vin is derived from an AC voltage by a rectifier, then if the input power AC voltage changes, then the output DC voltage of the rectifier will change. If this is a battery in a battery operated device, then as the battery is operated, okay, let me put it this way. When the battery is fully charged, it has a certain voltage. As it discharges, a 100% charged battery versus a 40% charged battery has slightly different DC voltages at its output. So the battery voltage itself changes as the battery gets discharged. But as the battery discharges, we don't want VO, the DC voltage at the output, to change. That maintaining VO constant as Vin varies is called as line regulation. Line coming originally from the AC voltage, which is called line voltage. In most modern applications, this is a battery voltage, but the word still remains as to it being called a line regulation. Alright, so we want our buck converter to maintain a constant output voltage as both RL and Vin vary, and these are called as load and line regulation. Line and load, so in this circuit, how can we change the output voltage? Let's say RL changes and we want to maintain VO constant. So what else can we change in this circuit to bring back VO to its original value? Well, what we change is the duty cycle of S1, the turning on and off of S1, as we saw last time. The duty cycle of S1 is directly related to this. So in fact, the output voltage can be written approximately as a duty cycle of S1 multiplied by Vin. So if RL decreases and VO decreases, we increase the duty cycle so that VO also increases. Similarly, if Vin increases, let us say, VO will increase, but if you want to make VO smaller, we'll reduce the duty cycle. So both line and load regulation can be achieved by changing the duty cycle of the switching on and off of S1. So this is what is done in a buck converter to achieve regulation. And the way the duty cycle is changed is by connecting a negative feedback loop. Okay, so let us look at that loop. So here is the negative feedback loop. So this bottom is our original circuit. Now what we do is we take the output voltage, we feed it to an amplifier we apply a constant voltage, often called the reference voltage, to the positive terminal of the amplifier. We feed the output of this amplifier to the square wave oscillator, and now the square wave oscillator has a constant frequency, but its duty cycle is controlled by Vc. Alright, so inside this circuit, as Vc increases, the duty cycle of this square wave oscillator increases, and that square wave is fed as the input to control the on and off mechanism of the switch. So when the square wave voltage is high, the switch is on. When the square wave voltage is low, the switch is off or open, whatever. Alright, so let us qualitatively look at the operation of this negative feedback loop. So let us say RL decreases. Alright, if RL decreases, then VO will tend to decrease because RL has decreased. If VO decreases, then this difference Vref minus VO will increase, right, because VO has decreased, which means that Vc, which is proportional to Vref minus VO, will also increase. Vc increases, the duty cycle will increase, and if the duty cycle increases, VO will tend to increase. So this feedback loop, this circuit, counteracts the effect of the reduction in RL. So RL tended to reduce VO, but this loop makes VO increase again, so that the net effect of RL decreasing and the duty cycle increasing is that overall VO does not change much. Similarly, if Vin were to reduce, then just this lower part of the circuit, VO will tend to reduce. But again, if VO tends to reduce, duty cycle will increase, and then the duty cycle will cause VO also to increase. So either a change in RL or Vin will be counteracted by this feedback loop, so that VO remains almost a constant. In fact, if you put this whole thing around this amplifier in a closed box, and we say, well, the output of this amplifier is connected to the input, negative input of the amplifier through some circuit which we enclose in a box, and we say that circuit inside the box is causing negative feedback. Then we say that because negative feedback is present, if the gain of this amplifier is large, then Vref will be approximately equal to VO. And we had studied this in some detail when we studied operational amplifiers last semester. So you go back and read that theory of how this came about from last semester's notes or lectures, whatever. But the bottom line or the final effect is that the gain of this amplifier is large enough, then irrespective of the value of RL and Vin, VO will be approximately equal to Vref. So we have achieved regulation in that we have made VO constant independent of RL and Vin. Alright, so we are almost there with our final buck converter circuit. Let us do one or two more things. The amplifier, this amplifier is actually not an op-amp, because the op-amp has a very high gain which is not required here. So this amplifier is actually an amplifier with a gain of about 100, and that amplifier is implemented with an op-amp. So by the way, I am using this symbol of this for an op-amp here, but here I am using it as a symbol for an amplifier of a gain 100. Okay, so this amplifier has we use this amplifier with a gain of 100, so we'll make R4 by 3 equal to 99, and then we get an amplifier of gain 100. We'll also use this symbol of plus minus a triangle for a comparator, which we'll see next. Okay, alright, so that is that. Now it turns out, so here what we said is, well, we have a square wave oscillator and we'll apply the duty cycle of the square wave oscillator is controlled by an external voltage. So this is actually called a voltage controlled oscillator. Now voltage controlled oscillators are kind of tricky to design, and they are much more work than designing a simple square wave oscillator of a fixed frequency and fixed duty cycle. So at least for our purposes, what we'll do is we'll design a what will we design? We'll design design this what is inside this box in two parts. One part will be a fixed frequency, fixed duty cycle square wave oscillator, and then another circuit before it, so that the output of the oscillator is a duty cycle. The duty cycle of the output is controlled by Vc, and this is a circuit that will achieve it. So we have we will have actually a triangle or a sinusoidal oscillator of fixed frequency and fixed duty cycle, and Vc is this voltage, and we'll connect these to a comparator, and the output will be a square wave whose duty cycle will be controlled by this voltage Vc. So to understand this, let us first study a comparator, and then we'll study how this circuit works. So first we need to know what a comparator is. A comparator is actually, so this is a symbol also, as I said, for a comparator. A comparator is the circuit that has this following characteristics. The output of the comparator is high if V plus is greater than V minus, and the output of the comparator is low if V plus is less than V minus. So if you were to plot the characteristic of a comparator, if V plus minus V minus is negative, then the output is low, some low value, and if V plus minus V minus is positive, then the output is a high value. Alright, here I have said VCC and minus VEE, which are the supply voltages to the comparator. More generally, I would say V high and V low. V high is sometimes equal to VCC, sometimes it is a little lower than VCC. Similarly, the magnitude of V low is typically either equal to VEE or slightly lower than VEE. Alright, note that V out is not defined when V plus is equal to V minus. Alright, when V plus minus V minus is 0, the output is transitioning from low to high. And if you were to ask what is the value of the voltage when V plus is V minus, we say we actually really cannot define it because it is transitioning. This is of course for an ideal comparator. Ideal comparator has this characteristic. Now if you remember, last semester we had drawn a similar curve for an op-amp, and an ideal op-amp has the same characteristic, but this ideal characteristic implies that the voltage gain of this circuit at when V plus is equal to V minus, the voltage gain is infinite, because the slope of this line is infinite when V plus minus V minus is 0, which is of course only an ideal case. Real life circuits don't give infinite voltage gains. So real life comparators will have a finite gain, and so this line will be a very it will be a very steep vertical line, but it will not be exactly vertical. So it will be a very high gain circuit. So in fact, a comparator is nothing but a very high gain amplifier. All right. Yeah, that is all. So it's a very high gain amplifier, and therefore all op-amps can actually, theoretically, they can be used as comparators, because op-amps by definition are high gain amplifiers. But there is a difference in the internal construction of op-amps and comparators, because op-amps, generally speaking, are used with some negative feedback. Comparators by definition there is no negative feedback. They compare voltages and they give an output that is high or low. So the difference between a comparator and an op-amp operationally is that Op amps are used with negative feedback. Comparators are always used in open loop configurations. Now it turns out that because of this difference, there is a difference in the internal circuitry of op amps and comparators. We will study this actually by the end of this course. Right now I am not able to explain this. I will be able to explain it only after we study what is called as stability and compensation. When we study that, we'll see that op amps, because they are operated with negative feedback, are slower. Their speed of operation is slower. Comparators, because they are open loop, they can operate at much higher frequencies. So usually op amps are not used as comparators, all right, because they are op amps will be slower. And comparators cannot be used as op amps, because if you put comparator in a negative feedback loop, they will be unstable, and we'll see what is unstable by the end of this course. But other than that, in terms of the gain, op amps and comparators are both very high gain amplifiers. All right. Now let us see how this circuit works, how this circuit gives a square wave output. If the input, so I am taking an example of a triangle wave input and a constant DC voltage connected to the other terminal, and in fact I will vary this VC. Okay, so what I have done is I have made a plot of, so let's say this is the triangle wave. VC is varying slowly with time, and let's look at the output voltage. Okay, so what is this? VT is the triangle wave, VC is the slowly varying voltage. So this is a triangle wave of between plus and minus 12 volts, all right. VC is varying from minus 10 to plus 10. And what happens to the output? All right. So what does the output do? If VC is greater than VT, the output is high. If VC is less than VT, the output is low. All right. So let's look at this. So at time t equal to 0, VT is lower than VC, or let's say VC is higher than VT, so the output is high. Then at this point, VC becomes lower than VT, the triangle wave is crossing VC, so the triangle wave becomes higher, so the output goes low. So when the triangle wave goes up and down till this time, the output stays low. At this point again, the triangle wave is going lower than VC, so the output goes high. It stays high for a short time, and then again the triangle wave goes down and comes up, and then the output has gone low, and it is doing this. All right, now let us look at the duty cycle. So what is happening is when VC is small, all right, when VC is a small voltage, the crossing of the triangle wave on its going down and coming up are very close to each other. So the output voltage stays high for a short time. All right. If VC is high here, all right, then the triangle wave has to go through a much longer duration before it crosses VC, and therefore the output voltage is staying high for a much longer duration. So if you think about duty cycle, the duty cycle, which is for how long the output stays high, is smaller when VC is low, and the duty cycle is high when the VC is high. All right. So if you consider VC to be constant, let us say here somewhere, let us say minus 6 volts. If VC was constant at minus 6 volts, then the output would have will stay high for this much and will stay low for this much, and it will repeat, and therefore it will have a low duty cycle. If VC was high, let us say plus 6 volts, then the output square wave would be high for a longer duration and low for a much shorter duration. Therefore, the duty cycle increases as Vc increases, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. So this circuit with a triangle wave input of a constant frequency and a DC voltage cause a square wave output, and the duty cycle of the square wave can be changed by changing Vc. Alright, so this is our circuit. So we put this circuit back in our buck converter. So we had the amplifier. Now we put a comparator and a triangle wave oscillator. And now this Vs is a square wave whose duty cycle is determined by Vc. And Vc in turn determined by Vo. And therefore the duty cycle is determined by Vo. So in fact, because this is a negative feedback loop, the duty cycle of Vo by the lower circuit is determined by the switching on and off, and of the upper circuit is okay, what am I saying? I'm saying the duty cycle, the output voltage is determined by the duty cycle, and the duty cycle affects the output voltage through this lower circuit as well as the higher circuit, and both the circuit act in opposition so that eventually the output voltage stays at Vref. Alright, okay, one more thing and then we would have arrived at our final buck converter. One more thing we want from a buck converter is that we want to be able, so for a general purpose buck converter, specific buck converters, we will want the output voltage to be somewhere predefined value. For a general purpose buck converter, we want this output voltage to be variable. We want to be given some Vin, we want to be able to change Vo over a range of values. Alright. So in this circuit, if you want to change the value of Vo, what we'll do is we can change Vref, right? Because Vo is equal to Vref. So if we change Vref, then Vo will also change. Now it turns out that in real life, Vref is generated by some complicated circuit that generates a very constant DC voltage that is independent of temperature and all kinds of things. And to make that voltage variable is also not easy because that's a very complex circuit. So we don't want to change Vref, but we want the ability to change Vo. Alright. So the way we do this is we add two more resistors, R1, R2. So we are in RL. We add two more resistance, R1, R2 in parallel with RL. We make R1, R2 much greater than RL. So R1 plus R2 may be 1,000 times RL. So that the effective resistance of this is still RL because R1, R2 are much larger. And so these R1, R2 don't really affect the operation of this lower half of the circuit. But here is what they do. The voltage Vf, which we call the F for feedback, is a voltage divided voltage of Vo. Alright, because this is Vo. So Vf is R2 by R1 plus R2 of Vo. Now, because Vf is connected to the amplifier and because of this whole negative feedback principle, Vf now in this circuit is going to be equal to Vref. If Vf is equal to Vref, that means Vo is going to be equal to what? R1 plus R2 by R2 into Vref, right? We put it, is that okay? So Vf is equal to Vref. Vf is also equal to R2 by R1 plus R2 Vo. So this is equal to Vref. And so we get Vo equal to R1 plus R2 by R2 into Vref. So now if I want to change Vo rather than changing Vref, I can change R1 and or R2 and then we get different values of Vo. So this R1, R2 allow us to change Vo without changing Vref. We must make sure again, as I said, that R1, R2 are much larger than RL. So that neither do they consume power nor do they affect the operation of the rest of the circuit. Alright. So this is our final buck converter circuit. Alright, so this buck converter circuit converts an input DC voltage which is fixed to a range of output DC voltages, and the output DC voltage, whatever value we decide based on R1 and R2, remains constant even when RL varies or Vin varies. Alright, so that is this whole, and this is actually the basic. Well, in fact, there are a large number of commercially available integrated circuit chips which basically have this configuration, this circuit. So from next lecture onwards, we'll go through a detailed design procedure for actually coming up with an actual buck converter with actual values and actual op amp and comparator and actual oscillator circuit. All right.